A textbook that's been put forward for use, possible use in Texas high school classrooms is being widely criticized by educators, legislators, and residents alike for what they're calling racist, offensive, and downright incorrect statements about Mexican Americans. The book, simply titled Mexican American Heritage, was the only text submitted when the Board of Education called for an ethnic studies book. In a hearing yesterday littered with protesters and other concerned citizens, the state board addressed these issues, many speaking out themselves against the book and promising to do what they can to keep it out of classrooms. Critics point to passages that say Chicano activists, quote, adopted a revolutionary narrative that opposed Western civilization and wanted to destroy this society. And also, quote, stereotypically, Mexicans were viewed as lazy compared to European or American workers. The Texas Tribune's Alexa Ura joins us live from Austin with more on this contentious text. Alexa, opponents of this book point largely to what they call racist language, but there is one board member who says it also has a problem with the facts. Fill us in on Ruben Cortez's findings.
So that is one of the board members who actually called for a review of the book and asked scholars from different areas of the state to look into it. And basically, the conclusion that they came with was that there are just too many errors in the book for it to even be corrected, much less used in Texas classrooms.
Sure, so they're saying this isn't just offensive, you're not just perpetuating stereotypes, but this finding, Ruben Cortez's finding, says it's also just not right. So how do proponents of this book, including the publisher, justify its contents in the face of all this criticism?
You know, in an interview with the Tribune a couple days ago, the publisher actually said that those who were taking issue with the book itself were being slanderous and libelous and taking things out of context, particularly some of those findings or statements that people have focused on in claiming that the book is actually racist.
Interesting. So they are defending it, and the publishing company still seems comfortable with it ending up in classrooms if that's what happens. Something else that this whole issue has kind of brought up, and it's been an issue a little bit with some other things over the past few years. The State Board of Education many times during yesterday's hearing said, hey, look, we don't have as much oversight on textbooks as we used to. So Alexa, how true is that? It all has to do with Senate Bill 6?
So they've pointed to action that lawmakers took a couple years ago that were surrounding a social studies book and some contents there. And what the State Board of Education is arguing is that they have now lost some of the oversight that they had in order to pass some of these books or approve some of these textbooks. But what opponents of the proposed book are saying is that this could have all been fixed if the State Board of Education would have approved Mexican American Studies courses as a statewide elective, an official elective, rather than just an optional course and then just called for instructional material. Because if they had approved it as a statewide elective, more classrooms might have taken it up, and then maybe more publishers might have actually submitted a book that would have been in wider use. At least that's what they claim.
Interesting. So what now? With a lot of members of the board seeming opposed to this book, could it still actually end up in Texas high school classrooms? What's the next step here?
So it looks like the official vote on whether to allow the book in Texas classrooms will take place in November. I think from between now and then we'll continue to see a couple of revisions to the book is what the publisher has promised. But you know, I think a majority or a big portion of the board at this point had said they cannot approve it, including 4 of the Democratic members and at least 2 Republicans. So I think if some of those clarifications or corrections go through, there might still be some pretty staunch opposition to it come November.
Sure, right, because they're saying, look, these corrections, I've seen a couple quotes from a couple folks saying it's beyond repair. What is it? They've been saying it's flawed beyond repair. Interesting. Last question, Alexa, just because this is such a hot topic and whatever you can say to this, but why in Texas specifically is it, what am I trying to say? Why in Texas are people so upset about this and what they're calling a stereotypical or racist book?
You know, I think Texas right now is a changing state, and we have a growing Hispanic population, many of which do have ties to Mexico. And so there was sort of a push to include Mexican American studies courses in school so that children could learn about their heritage and about their background. And so I think for a lot of them, what we've heard is that they see this as almost an insult, that after their fight to get this course approved for Texas classrooms, that now they have this book that has all of these claims, many of which have been said to be factually incorrect and others that are more so racist.
Sure. Whatever this book is, it certainly does not seem to be what those folks had in mind. All right, Alexa Ura from the Texas Tribune, thanks so much for joining us and providing a little insight on what's happening at the State Board of Education right now. Thank you.